She started staying at the guest house after finishing college, just for a few weeks while her parents figured out a new place across town. I hadn't seen her in a couple of years. Last time, she was still that shy girl trailing behind her mom during summer barbecues. Now she was different. Grown, confident, funny in that dry way that made silence more comfortable than words. I didn't think much of it at first. I was still picking up the pieces from my own life. My ex-wife had left 6 months ago, and the silence of the house had just begun to feel normal again. The camera kept me going. Clients, gigs, editing photos at night, but most days felt like time passing for no real reason. She slipped easily into the rhythm of things. Morning coffee became a thing. She'd wander into the kitchen barefoot, ask about the music I played, tease me about being too serious. We'd talk about books. She found an old volume of Kerouac on my shelf and carried it around like it meant something. The comfort came quickly. Maybe too quickly. One morning, I half-joked, watching her lean over the kitchen counter with her tea. "If you were my age, I'd take you on a road trip. Just disappear for a while." She didn't miss a beat. "What are we waiting for?" she said with a sly smile. I laughed. But then, silence. That kind that stretches just long enough to feel like it's saying something you both heard but won't repeat. The moment passed. She went back to scrolling her phone. But something had shifted. I couldn't stop replaying the scene. Her laughter, that look in her eyes like maybe she meant it, or maybe she just liked watching me squirm. Over the next few days, she started hanging around the studio more often. Said she liked watching me work. She'd sit beside me while I edited landscapes, her shoulder almost touching mine. I could feel the warmth of her skin, the scent of her shampoo, subtle but constant. One night, we were going through some old road trip files, photos from Oregon, Utah, long drives under golden skies. She leaned closer than usual, resting her chin on my shoulder as the slideshow played. "These feel like stories," she whispered. "Like you were looking for something while running from something else." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She understood more than I'd said. Truth was, I was still trying to outrun things. My ex had found someone younger. I saw it coming, but that didn't make it sting any less. I'd spent the past months wondering if I was boring, or broken, or both. She told me one night, over whiskey and rain on the windows, that she felt stuck. Her parents wanted her to apply to grad school, but she wasn't sure. She said, "I feel like I'm supposed to want all these big, safe things, but what if I don't?" I said, "Then don't." She looked at me with something that lingered, too long to be innocent. We kept talking, deeper, quieter. Hours passed. At one point, she sat cross-legged on the floor, tracing the rim of her glass with her finger. When she stood up, she brushed against me. Not on purpose, but not entirely by accident either. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. Later that night, lying in my bed, I stared at the ceiling and tried to name what I was feeling. Guilt, maybe. Excitement. Fear. All wrapped in something dangerous. The storm came through on a Thursday night. The power flickered and died just after dinner. I lit a few candles, found an old speaker with battery left. She curled up on the couch beside me, a blanket draped over both our laps. "I love this," she said, her voice low. "Feels like the kind of night that doesn't belong to real life." I smiled, letting the words hang in the air. Then I said it. "We should just run off, you and me, like in one of those indie films with bad lighting and great music." She turned toward me. I expected the usual eye roll, the laugh, but this time she just tilted her head. "Why not? I've never done anything reckless." The room felt suddenly warmer. I laughed, trying to lighten the mood. "You'd regret it by hour 3. I snore, and I overthink gas station sandwiches. Still sounds better than what I have waiting for me," she murmured. We didn't talk much after that. The candle burned down slowly between us. When she stood to go to bed, her fingers brushed mine as she passed me the blanket. I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the blue glow of my phone on the nightstand, trying not to think about what it would mean if she really meant it. Then the text came in. Still thinking about that road trip. Just that. No emojis. No context. And suddenly sleep was the farthest thing from my mind. 3 days after her text, we were on the road. I told myself it was for work, a photography assignment down by the coast, early mornings and rugged light, the kind of landscapes that sold well, but I could have done it alone. I didn't need a passenger. Still, I asked her, and she said yes without hesitation. We packed light, a backpack each, camera gear, and not much else. No route, no timeline. Just drive until the silence felt clean. As the miles passed, I kept telling myself this wasn't a mistake. But the way her hair caught the wind when she rolled down the window, the way her fingers drummed on the dashboard to the rhythm of old rock songs, none of it felt innocent. There was something hypnotic about the open road and the way it gave us permission to leave behind who we were back home. We didn't speak about boundaries. We didn't need to. The car was a confessional, the spaces, between exits filled with stories that came easier than they should have. She told me about a boy from school who had never made her feel seen. I told her about how being married didn't always mean being loved. She laughed at my sarcasm. I watched her through the corner of my eye, wondering how long I could keep pretending this wasn't exactly what it looked like. At a rest stop somewhere, near the state line, she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe too hard. The warmth of her skin against mine made the air feel different. That night, we ended up at a cheap roadside motel, one with a rusted sign and thin walls. 2 twin beds. I didn't question it. She tossed her bag on one bed, mine on the other. I turned on the water in the bathroom and stepped into the shower, trying to wash off the feeling of wanting something I shouldn't. When I stepped out, the bathroom door hadn't fully closed. She was changing in the dim light, half turned away, and for a second she looked at me. Not surprised, not startled, just there. Present. Her eyes didn't move until mine did. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling. I could hear her, breath from the other bed, steady and close. I imagined her reaching out. I imagined what would happen if I let her. My body ached with restraint I barely understood. The next day we drove until we hit the ocean, set up camp just off the beach. She built a small fire while I took photos of the sky losing light. She sat close beside me, legs tucked under herself, hair damp from the sea breeze. She stared at the flames for a while before speaking. I feel more seen with you in 3 days than anyone in 3 years. I should have stopped it right there, should have drawn a line, but her voice wasn't begging, it was just honest. Something about the truth in it cracked me open. This isn't fair to you, I said, eyes still on the fire. Don't make that choice for me, she replied. We didn't kiss then, we didn't touch. But something shifted in that silence. A current passing between us like a fuse had just been lit and was slowly burning towards something inevitable. That night, the rain started after midnight. We'd planned to sleep in the car, but it was too loud, too cramped. The motel we found only had 1 room left, 1 bed. I hesitated when the front desk clerk handed me the key, but she didn't. She took it from my hand and walked ahead. In the room, the air felt thick, charged. We didn't talk much. She sat on the edge of the bed, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone like nothing was happening. Like everything wasn't happening. I sat beside her. Close, but not close enough to touch. The silence did the rest. She reached for my hand. I froze. Her fingers were warm and steady. I could have pulled away. I didn't. When she turned to kiss me, it wasn't sudden. It was slow, measured, almost gentle, like asking a question she already knew the answer to. Kissed her back. There was nothing rushed about it. It wasn't lust at first. It was longing. A hunger that had been waiting in the shadows, slowly stepping into the light. Clothes were discarded without urgency. The room remained quiet, except for breath, the soft creak of the mattress, the rhythm of something we both knew we'd never undo. There are no perfect words for that kind of closeness. It wasn't about skin. It was about what had been breaking open between us for weeks, months maybe. It was about the ache of being seen and the comfort of being wanted. Afterward, we lay tangled in silence, her fingers tracing circles on my chest, mine resting on her hip. I couldn't look at her right away. I stared at the ceiling again, the same way I had back home. But this time, I whispered into the dark. I kept telling myself this wasn't a betrayal, but it was, of who I used to be. She didn't say anything. She just pulled the blanket higher and pressed her forehead to my arm. And I knew then, this wasn't just a road trip anymore. Morning came soft and gray, the kind that slipped in through curtains like it was trying not to wake anyone. I opened my eyes to find her still there, her face half buried in the pillow, hair tangled and warm against my shoulder. The sheets were wrapped around us, limbs knotted in a way that felt deliberate but impossible to explain. She stirred, blinking up at me, sleep still clinging to her expression. There was no shame in the room, no panic, just silence, but not the kind that follows regret, the kind that waits. She smiled, just a little. "You're not going to regret this, are you?" I looked up at the ceiling, exhaled. Only every day, and not at all. She didn't flinch at that. She understood. We both did. We packed in silence, but it wasn't the same kind that had filled the car before. Something had shifted. We weren't pretending anymore. The fantasy had been lived, touched, burned into skin. What was left now was the slow pull back into gravity. The road home didn't feel like freedom this time. It felt like retreat. The neighborhood hadn't changed. The same porch lights, the same barking dog 3 doors down. But we had. That difference followed us like a shadow that wouldn't stay behind. Neighbors waved. I waved back. She slipped into the guest house without saying much, and I found myself missing her presence before she'd even left the frame. I spent the next day at my desk, fingers over the keyboard, but no real work getting done. The photos we took on the coast stared back at me like evidence. Every image held something I couldn't crop out. The way her hand blurred at the edge of the frame, the corner of her smile in a mirror, the feeling that we'd borrowed something we weren't meant to keep. She was quieter, too. Not withdrawn, just careful, measured. She found an old photo in the drawer one morning. Me and my ex, arms wrapped around each other, back when we thought we had time. She didn't say anything, just stared for a second, then gently closed the drawer again. That night, she sat on the porch with me, knees pulled to her chest, a blanket draped around her shoulders. "What happens now?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. "I don't know," I said. "But we happened." She nodded like that was enough. Maybe it was. 2 mornings later, she told me she was leaving. Early. Said she'd been offered a chance to travel. A teaching assistant job in Europe. Temporary, but far enough. Said it felt like the right time to go. I didn't argue. I didn't ask her to stay. That would have been selfish. At the door, she hugged me tight, her chin pressed to my collarbone, her breath slow and steady. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being the one who woke me up." Then she kissed me once more. Not a question, not a beginning, just a soft, full stop. And then she was gone. The days after were slow, quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet I'd known before her. There was a weight to it, like the house had absorbed her presence and was reluctant to let it go. I still made coffee for 2, out of habit. Still left the porch light on some nights. Her sandals stayed by the door longer than they should have. I couldn't bring myself to move them. In the studio, I framed one photo from the trip. The beach at dusk, 2 sets of footprints walking away from the fire. No faces, just movement, just memory. I joked about running away once. About packing up the pieces of my life and handing them to someone too young, too brave, too reckless to say no. And she dared to believe it. In another life, we were perfect. No age gap, no scars, no pasts weighing us down. But in this life, we were just real, messy, fleeting, honest in a way that left bruises long after the moment passed. I don't regret her. I regret the time. The way we met in the middle of endings. Some stories don't end with answers. just a beginning we couldn't keep.